Hello. In our last show, we talked about an expected cargo ship carrying Tamil migrants at the port of Esquimalt, BC. It is now a story that the world knows about. It has been the conversation at dinner tables, and it has also been the root cause for heated arguments on radio shows. The truth of the matter is, 492 Tamils have landed in Vancouver seeking asylum and are in detention for screening purposes. The Government of Canada and its response thus far has been praised by UNHCR, United Nations Refugee Agency. While Canada seems to be divided on whether these people should be allowed into the country or not, the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada is diligently doing this screening on merit to see if each of these claimants meet the requirements needed to be refugees in Canada. At this juncture, it might be helpful to know what these people were fleeing from. I sat down with Thamilvany, a young biomedical scientist who happened to be caught in the final stages of the war in Sri Lanka last year. Here's what she has to say. Thank you for giving us some time to speak to you about the final experience of, or your experience during the final days of the Mullawaikal massacre, Thamilvany. Thanks for joining us today. I know it might be hard reliving those days again, almost a little past a year. But it is something that you are an eyewitness to and a lot of people do not know about. Yeah. So if you can, start off by saying how and when did you get to Vanni from your resident country of UK?
That's right.
And then how did you get into all of this?
Well, I was born in Jaffna, and after the displacement, 1994, I left Jaffna and left the country, and me and my family as a refugee went to UK, and I did my studies since then in UK. During the ceasefire time, I wanted to go back to Vanni to see my relatives and the country and friends and families, but then unfortunately I didn't have the visa in UK, so I couldn't go. But in 2007 I finished my degree. I'm a biomedical scientist, and then I've decided that before I start my job, I wanted to take about 6-month break away from studies and work. Wanted to spend the time back home. So in 2008 February, the month of February, I decided to go to Vanni. And I went there and I've stayed with my one of my cousin brother there.
In 2008, things were relatively peaceful.
It was, yeah. I didn't have any problem entering into Vanni, or during my stay there for the first about 6 months, no problem at all. I know there were war going on sort of Manna side, but nowhere near inside Vanni. So. Right.
And what were you doing there in Vanni?
I was with my cousin and sort of going around and looking at places like we do Kilnochi, Pukurirupu, places like that. And then I was invited to teach English in one of the Tamil youth centers in Visomadu. So I was teaching them English as well as computer and some other courses there. That's how life went for me there.
And then when the war escalated and when the Sri Lankan army started moving in closer to the Vanni region in Kilnochi and all that stuff, I'm sure your teaching job became pointless at that time. What were you doing and what was the situation like for the general populace?
For the first time I witnessed the displacement and the people's struggle was in November when the Kilnochi displacement started. So November 2008, when Kilnochi people has to move from Kilnochi and they came down to Visomadu. That's the time I realized that the people are actually moving out and it's a struggle, and especially during that time it was raining a lot as well, so people didn't have places to stay and they were on the road with temporary tents and things like that. Though even then I just didn't think that we would ever have to move away from Visomadu. I thought that's it, from Kilnochi, and that's it, that's the last displacement. But then in January 2009, when I have to, as in Visomadu, everyone from Visomadu has to move away from there, which is sort of, I just sort of realized this is not going to stop. The war has started, and it's no point that at this point that I'm going to go out from here. Because during that time, even when the Kranoj displacement took place, I was helping out with the people, going around and helping around, during their stays, sort of, in the temporary tents and things like that. So I choose to stay and help the people. That visual model displacement has affected so much because people were actually running to save their life. Shell bombs everywhere and running around. At that time, it's like for the people who displaced from Mannar, it's already like their 20th, 26th displacement. So at that point, most of the people have lost all their properties, or most of their belongings and everything. They only had like one piece of handbag luggage with them. That's all. So it was a really different and a difficult situation for me to experience.
How much of your biomedical science education come in handy at that time?
Well, not much to the beginning, but then in April sometimes, when I was like sort of at the beginning of Mulivaikal, one of the doctors from the hospital has asked me to come and help in the hospital, because at that time it was like short of medication as well as people voluntarily helped in the hospital. There was only 5 doctors for the whole population in Vanni. So there was volunteers wasn't enough to look after the people in the hospital. So I was asked to come and help. So in April I went into the hospital to help them. And it was totally a disaster, working in the hospital, because compared to the hospitals I've seen abroad, it's totally different. It doesn't have the basic needs of a hospital. I mean, in fact, it wasn't any hospital anyway in the first place. It was, they have to displace the hospital every time they move around to a school or some sort of building. So it wasn't like a proper hospital building. It didn't have any of the facilities as a hospital. So it was a really difficult situation for me to handle, actually, because I am not sure about things, how it's done, and everything is new to me. Without wearing gloves and without even the proper medical equipments. I found it really hard to cope with the situation in there. But after about 2-3 weeks, it sort of, because every day you get hundreds and hundreds of wounded people come in, and sort of you're running around doing everything around. I sort of realized that this is the reality. This is what is a hospital here. So I have to cope with it and sort of start. So then I sort of start helping out, and I assisted the doctors mainly inside the operation theatre. So
obviously the doctors had to make do with whatever they had. There wasn't enough medication available. The hospitals being displaced themselves, I don't imagine they carried a lot of the medical equipment or medication with them. Now, you mentioned there were hundreds of people arriving to the hospitals every day with wounds of various nature. How many of these people were hopeful that they'll survive, or how did you and the rest of the doctors manage to save?
It was a very hard decision for us to make, actually, because anyone with a head injury, we wouldn't even go and look at them, because there's no way that we can take that patient in and do a surgery